Hello, everybody. This is Mark Rivera with GenreOnlinenet on YouTube. The television series True Detective is in its fourth season, and the fourth season features the star power of Jodie Foster as Liz Danvers, a police chief and detective, investigating a murder mystery along with another detective named Evangeline Navarro, who is played by Callie Reese. The story takes place in the fictional town of Ennis, Alaska, during the point in the year where there are approximately 60 days of darkness because of the location of where the fictional city is supposed to be located to the Arctic Circle and just the nature of how things work weather wise and with regard to the positioning with the sun, etc. Basically, a lot of people have been talking about connections between the first season show and this current season because uh, the characters uh, are discovering possible leads that reflect upon the cult that was depicted in the first season of True Detective. Now, I have no problem with that, but in the new season, there seems to be a more deliberate move towards the supernatural as opposed to the subtlety of leaving it up to the viewer as to whether or not some of the things that we see, like the birds flying in a spiral pattern, are indeed supernatural, or are they simply things in the Matthew McConaughey's detective Rust's character's vision? As it is, it's established that he has synesthesia, which is a real condition. I've actually studied it myself for something completely unrelated. And in addition to that, he himself even refers to having seen things that one could not necessarily tell if they were an illusion or not. And part of this could be because of the fact that he was a narcotics detective. My point being is that in the first season of True Detective, you basically had a story with possible supernatural elements, but by the end of the story, everything was resolved in such a way that it was up to the viewer's opinion as to whether or not the uh, events were indeed supernatural or were they the result of a cult. I've read people describe the videotape as being something that makes people scream as if it's something out of a horror film. And granted, while it is horrible and definitely is something out of a horror film, I think the reaction of people screaming has more to do with the content of the tape itself, that anybody who's forced to watch something like that would react in a screaming manner, because the reality is that there are some things, once you see them, you can't take them back out of your mind. I mean, there's movies out there that can be very good but will make you feel like you need a psychic shower afterwards because they have extreme toxic content. Now, fortunately, once you kind of get used to True Detective as a series, it's a lot easier to look over the darker points. But the one thing that made True Detective stand out, and I believe it needs to continue staying this way, is the fact that, one, for the fourth season, they cast Jodie Foster, okay? And her alone, she's an A-list actress who's won 2 Academy Awards. She's a recognizable name. There's a big reason why they put Jodie Foster as the lead. The other thing is that the showrunner of the series is purposely making the fourth season sort of a mirror image, like a dark mirror to the first season, in that instead of the warm bayou of Louisiana, you have the icy cold glaciers and tundra, if you will, of the Arctic or near Arctic in Alaska in a fictional town. And instead of it being a group of children and women that are victims of a cult, it appears to be a group of scientists who may have been working on some questionable research, but they're the ones who are presumed dead when we first see them, and yet there is one survivor who's in a coma and another one who they're looking for who may be a major part of the case. One of the elements in this new season is that there is a character, and she basically has the ability to talk and communicate with the dead. And that's fine. You know, there are in real life, there are people that can claim that they've communicated, and I mean, that's what a medium does. It's all up to whether or not you believe in it, which was part of the whole aspect of True Detective, which meant that depending on what you believe in is going to greatly affect your perception of reality. So in this new season, they're showing ghostly visions, and again, if it's meant to be literal, that's a mistake. And I'm going to explain why. You see, when the original show began, as I already noted, everything was open to interpretation. Also, the cultists were not all caught. We know this for a fact. In the end, there were some people related to a family named Tuttle that may still be at large that was involved in the ritualistic murder. And basically, this company, which is supposed to be a gigantic multi-conglomerate company with ties to governors and power elite, for lack of a better expression. But the series was smart enough to make it just, okay, we're going to say that this is happening, but we're not going to give you any information about it. We're not going to over-grandize it, okay? And we're going to instead imply things and leave it up to the viewer to decide. And yes, I believe that the Tuttle family was definitely involved in these ritualistic killing that harkens back to things by Ambrose Bierce with regard to the city of Carcosa, which is fictional, as well as the Yellow King, which is by another fictional author. Now, you can have that same type of villainy extending from one place or another and still maintain the mystique of True Detective. But the minute you make it supernatural, then you're changing the context of the series. Because True Detective at its best should never be something that portrays itself to the point where suddenly we're a supernatural show. This series is about detective work and red herrings and that sort of thing. They catch a bad guy or perhaps a group of bad people, but it's always a upward, journey up a mountain, and the journey is twofold. There's one journey that's moving toward the light of truth, and then there's the other journey that's pushing against the oppressive dark side of the world, if you want to call it that. Um, but as Matthew McConaughey's character of Detective Rust says, the light is winning at the end of the first season, and that's an important thing to keep in mind because while you can have a cult of the same caliber involving even some people connected to the Louisiana and the uh, Alaskan branches of a cult, the minute you start to make the cult more than exactly what it's supposed to be, the minute you really do make something supernatural is when True Detective becomes the X Files. And in the X Files, you can have supernatural characters and you can have supernatural events because from the very beginning, the X Files was basically a police procedural show with monsters. However, the monsters in True Detective are people, and I've always felt that when you compare the evil that people do in this world compared to monsters, people are more scary all the time because no matter how many bad things monsters have done on film, in the worlds of fiction, they'll never be up to the level of horrid behavior and evil that ordinary humans have and are capable of committing. And so there's a good reason right there why the supernatural elements should be remain a part of the mystique but never confirmed, because the minute you do that you are changing the method of how the show is perceived, and perception is indeed everything. Now, another thing is people have been talking about, oh, Matthew McConaughey's Detective Russ is going to come back, and wouldn't it be great? If they brought his character back, it would be the worst thing ever in the world. And the reason why is that the minute you bring a character like him into this season, you're undermining the point of the season itself. This season is about two women detectives trying to solve a case in a remote part of the world that we actually, as normal Americans, probably know less about Alaska and the Arctic Circle than we do Louisiana. And I could tell you right now, I've never been to Louisiana and I've never been to Alaska. So my knowledge of both places is extremely limited. And so I'm not going to judge two different states and the locations based on what a movie or a television series tells me alone. Because that's like making a prejudgment on somebody if you're a psychiatrist and you've never met them before and you're doing a long distance diagnosis. That's not something that will ever hold up because no matter how, in order, in the world of psychology, in order to diagnose somebody, you have to have some form of contact. You can speculate about somebody's behavior and what they may or may not have wrong with them, but until you meet that person, you can't diagnose them. And so a lot of people forget that. And that's why I really feel that with regard to this season, it would be horrible to bring Matthew McConaughey's character back into the show because it would undermine, one, why would you cast Jodie Foster only to have her overshadowed in terms of character by bringing back Matthew McConaughey? It just wouldn't make any it would not make any dramatic sense. This is a show where characters are flawed and they must overcome the flaws within themselves in order to overcome the mysteries that are presented to them. And so it's not that Matthew McConaughey is a bad person or a bad actor. Quite the opposite. He's appeared in a great many films and has shown a range from being in romantic comedies and dramas to being in genre films. And so the previous first season of True Detective really stands out as a result of that. And you could even say the same thing about Woody Harrelson, who has not only appeared in sitcoms as famous as Cheers, but he's gone on to have an incredible career in comedies as well as dramas and other types of programs, including True Detective. And in real life, he's a friend of Matthew McConaughey. They're good friends. They're both from Texas. And so there's another reason why these two people have such great chemistry together on screen is because of the fact that they have great chemistry with each other off screen. And, this can translate into many different things. It's much like Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman in the upcoming Deadpool film, where, Hugh Jackman uh, is a friend of Ryan Reynolds in real life and they get along. And as a result, them appearing together on screen allows them to work to work on their characters in a humorous way, since Deadpool kind of crosses the genre from uh, just your superhero story to literally breaking the fourth wall and adding a comedic element to it. But it established itself as that from the very beginning. And in the case of True Detective, it never established itself as being 100% supernatural. And this current season is really about two female characters, not two male characters. And I'm not a woke person or anything like that. I'm just basically stating that people who expect to see Matthew McConaughey's Detective Rust or Woody Harrelson's character to come over by plane and help solve things are dreaming. It would be the worst thing in the world. It would be like having Superman show up at that point. I mean, it would just undermine everything that this show is trying to accomplish. So, for those of you who are basically hoping for that, do not hope for that. In fact, I hope to God that they don't dilute the show to the point where it becomes a X Files in everything but name only. Because the reality of the matter is while you can get away with certain things with certain shows, each genre has its limits. And what made True Detective work in its first season is the person who wrote the scripts and the people that were involved in it knew the genre from beginning to end and were therefore able to carry it in such a way that we had this incredible crime novel for television that left us wanting more. Keep the mystique and keep the focus on what's going on now. Don't try and mix things that never belonged to begin with. This is my opinion. You can disagree with me and leave a comment regardless of whether you agree with me or not. And I hope you're all having a great day. This is Mark Rivera with GenreOnlinenet on YouTube, and I will see you all in the next video. Have a great evening now.